I learned the hard way that when soil feels stiff, dry, and unresponsive, the problem usually is not what most people think it is. It is not a lack of nutrients. It is not that I failed to add enough compost. The real issue is that the soil has lost its life. Healthy soil is not just dirt with food mixed in, it is a living system, and earthworms are the machinery that keeps that system running. When they disappear, the soil slowly shuts down. Plants struggle, roots stay shallow, and no amount of feeding from above seems to make a lasting difference. For years, I assumed patience was the only solution. I believed worms would return on their own someday. What surprised me was learning that I could invite them back quickly, without buying worms, without waiting years, and without relying on expensive products. There is a simple underground signal that flips the system back on. When the right material is placed beneath the soil in the right way, earthworms locate it, move in, multiply, and begin repairing the soil from below. Fertilizer cannot do what they do. Earthworms are far more than helpful visitors. They are soil builders. As they travel through the ground, they carve passageways that relieve compaction and allow oxygen and water to move freely. As they eat, they transform organic material into castings rich in nutrients plants can actually use. Those castings also contain beneficial microbes and natural growth regulators that support steady, balanced plant development. Soil filled with worms behaves differently. It absorbs water instead of shedding it. It resists erosion instead of washing away. It feeds plants gradually rather than overwhelming them all at once. Without worms, soil tightens, roots weaken, and plants become dependent on constant outside inputs just to survive. Attracting worms is not an optional improvement. It is the base layer of lasting fertility. So why do so many gardens lose worms in the first place? Most of the time, it happens unintentionally. Repeated tilling collapses their tunnel networks. Leaving soil bare exposes it to heat and drying winds. Synthetic fertilizers and salt-based products disrupt the microbial communities worms rely on for food. Even compost, when left sitting on the surface, often fails to draw worms deeper into the ground where they are most needed. Worms are not chasing nutrients alone. They follow moisture stability, protection, and slowly breaking organic material that feeds microbes over time. That is why burying organic matter changes everything. The fastest way I know to restart worm activity is to place soft, carbon-rich material beneath the soil surface. This kind of material holds moisture, shelters microbes, and decomposes gradually. Materials like soaked cardboard, shredded paper, aging leaves, and partially broken down plant matter work especially well. Among all of them, plain cardboard consistently stands out. When it is moistened and buried shallowly, cardboard absorbs water, softens slowly, and creates a cool, dark pocket that worms instinctively seek out. It becomes a biological gathering point. Worms move in, feed safely, and reproduce directly in that zone. In nature, this process already exists. Fallen bark and decaying wood create the same conditions on forest floors. By burying cardboard, I am not inventing a shortcut. I am recreating a familiar habitat and allowing soil life to return on its own terms. Now, I want to slow down and talk about depth, because this is where most people either succeed or quietly sabotage the entire process. How deep you bury the material matters more than what you bury. If organic material goes too deep, oxygen becomes limited. When that happens, decomposition slows dramatically, microbes struggle, and worms lose interest. If the material stays too close to the surface, moisture escapes too quickly, and the zone dries out before biology can take hold. Through experience, I have found a sweet spot. The most effective depth is about 4 to 6 inches beneath the soil surface. To start, I dig a shallow trench or create a pocket in the soil. I lay the soaked cardboard or layered plant material flat in the bottom. Not folded, not crumpled. Flat contact matters. Then I gently return the excavated soil over the top and water the area lightly to settle everything in place. Within days, the process begins. Microbes are always first. Bacteria and fungi move in almost immediately, colonizing the buried material within hours. Earthworms arrive shortly after, not to eat the cardboard itself, but to feed on the microbial bloom surrounding it. This is where moisture changes everything. Dry organic material does not attract worms. In fact, it actively discourages them. Moist material does the opposite. It signals safety, food, and stability. That is why I never bury cardboard or paper without soaking it first. Plain water works, but results improve dramatically when I take one extra step. I mix 1 cup of finished compost or worm castings into 1 gallon of water. I stir it well and let it sit for about an hour. This creates a living solution filled with beneficial microbes. I use that mixture to soak the cardboard thoroughly before burying it. What happens next is fascinating. Those microbes do more than speed up decomposition. They release chemical signals that worms can detect from surprising distances underground. It is not random movement. The worms know exactly where to go. Once worms arrive, reproduction begins. As they feed on the microbes, they lay cocoons in the surrounding soil. Each cocoon has the potential to hatch multiple worms when conditions are right. Within 2 to 4 weeks, I begin to notice worm tunnels spreading outward from the buried zone like spokes on a wheel. The soil changes visibly. It becomes darker, looser, easier to work. Plant roots follow the worm channels naturally, gaining access to deeper moisture and nutrients without resistance. The soil begins to function again instead of fighting every attempt at growth. This is also why this method builds worm populations instead of creating a short-lived spike. When food is scattered on the surface, worms may visit briefly, especially after rain. But they do not stay. When food, moisture, and shelter exist below ground, worms settle in. They reproduce. They claim the space. That is the difference between seeing a few worms now and then and establishing a permanent population that works for you year after year. Because the buried material breaks down slowly, it feeds soil life for months, not days. And when one buried zone finishes decomposing, the worms naturally migrate outward, carrying fertility with them and improving the entire garden bed over time. Which brings us to the next question. How often should this process be repeated? One underground placement can wake soil up. I have watched it happen. But real change does not come from a single action. It comes from rhythm. In my own garden beds, I return to this method every 4 to 6 weeks, each time choosing a new location. I never disturb the entire area all at once. I let biology do the heavy lifting. Over the course of a growing season, the soil quietly reorganizes itself. Worm tunnels spread in every direction. Water begins to sink instead of run. What once resisted, every shovel becomes loose, dark, and cooperative. Perennial spaces demand a different kind of patience. In orchards and long-term plantings, I bury organic material just once per season, placing it near the drip line where fine feeder roots live. These areas benefit most from stability. Because the soil is left undisturbed, worm populations rise steadily without interruption. No sudden spikes, no crashes. Just slow, reliable growth that compounds year after year. There is one practice, however, that decides whether worms merely visit or truly settle in. That practice is mulch. Burying food underground opens the door, but mulch keeps it open. A surface layer 2 to 4 inches thick, made of leaves, straw, or wood chips, protects the soil from heat, wind, and moisture loss. Worms respond immediately. They travel upward under cover of darkness to feed, then retreat safely below the surface during the day. Bare soil offers no such protection. It overheats, dries out, and turns the underground environment hostile. Mulch connects the system. It turns individual buried zones into a continuous network. Worms no longer move cautiously from pocket to pocket. They travel freely, creating living corridors beneath the surface. I have also learned what shuts this system down. Burying material too deeply cuts off oxygen and stalls microbial life. Using oily or salty food scraps creates conditions worms instinctively avoid. Letting the soil dry completely stops reproduction almost overnight. And tilling, even once in a while, collapses tunnels and destroys cocoons before they ever have a chance to hatch. This approach thrives on restraint, minimal disturbance, consistent moisture, time. People often ask why this works faster than spreading compost alone. Compost improves chemistry. Worms rebuild structure. By feeding worms directly below the surface, I skip the long pause compost requires before it becomes usable. Worms process buried material into castings exactly where roots are growing. The entire soil food web activates at once, rather than waiting for surface inputs to migrate downward. That is why the change feels immediate, even though the work is gentle. And that brings me to the lesson I wish I had understood years ago. Earthworms do not need to be purchased, relocated, or forced into the soil. They need conditions worth staying for. When moisture is steady, food is buried at the right depth, and biology is supported instead of disrupted, worms arrive on their own. They build, they multiply, they repair what was lost, and they do it in ways no product on a shelf can reproduce. If this guide helped you rediscover living soil the natural way, I invite you to subscribe to Nature's Blueprint for more grounded, time-tested gardening wisdom. And if you know someone struggling with tired, unresponsive soil, share this with them. Because when we care for the life beneath our feet, the land returns the favor.